Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Jeremy Walter, founder of Fident Financial in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, on the show today. Jeremy has spent his entire career in financial planning, spending 10 years at his first firm before ultimately launching his own. He has a classic story of being in a really awesome situation, but it just wasn't fulfilling to him and his desire to be an entrepreneur and build a business from scratch. So after 10 years, he struck out on his own in early 2017 with the support of his former boss. He was able to bring about 20 clients over with him and has quickly grown to over 70 client households in less than 2 years. He had originally planned to cap his growth and stop once he was at capacity without hiring. And he shared his reason for letting that vision shift to where he plans to let his firm continue to grow and add additional team members. I was able to learn a lot about the Dave Ramsey SmartVestor program that he was a member of for about a year, along with the Kingdom Advisor certification and the Association of Faith-Based Advisors. Jeremy shared a lot of wisdom in this episode about how he approaches life and his business and his family and keeps them all in balance. So I think you'll really like this one. How much money do you need to launch your own firm? That's a question we've got at XY Planning Network hundreds, if not thousands of times. To answer it once and for all, we developed a free budget template that accounts for the many variables of your first year in business. Along with the template, successful XYPN members opened their books for us and shared how they did it, what they spent, and what they do differently. Our first year budget download is an incredibly valuable resource for anyone considering launching a firm of their own. Download it for free at www.xyplanningnetwork.com/budget. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/188. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, thanks a lot, Alan. I am truly honored to be on the show.
I'm excited because over the last couple of days, several different team members at XY Insight, we use Slack heavily, and we have a radio show Slack channel, and several people are like, hey, you should have him on. And I was like, good thing happening on Friday. We'll be recording. So
that's awesome.
Thank you for being on. I know we have a lot of team members that are excited to hear your story. So just at a high level, give listeners just a sort of an overview of the business, where you're located, number of clients, if you have a niche market, and then we'll dig into the details.
Yeah, sure. So the name of the firm is Fident Financial. Fident is a play off of the Latin word Fido, which is also a common dog's name, but it means in Latin to trust or to have confidence in. And that's what I want my clients to be able to feel and sense from their relationship with me. But I'm located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is Amish country for those who know about it. It's about an hour and a half outside of Philadelphia, eastern Pennsylvania. And started up in the beginning parts of 2017. I think I started the registration process in February-ish, was up and running April, I want to say. And currently I'm servicing about 70 households, mostly local, but do have a couple scattered relationships across the country.
So you've been in business going on 2 years now. So April 17. So we're coming up. We're recording in January of 19 now. So yeah, sort of coming through the oh crap, what did I do phase. That's what I like to call it. The first year is all excitement and energy, and the second year is like, what am I doing? Growing like crazy. So I can't wait to hear more about that. Let's talk about career path and sort of how you ultimately ended up launching your own firm. What was your path into financial planning? Did you know this was going to be your career?
No, I didn't. I feel like my story is similar to a lot of the XY firm owners, but I majored in business administration at college, which was a great overview, but did not necessarily know what I wanted to do with it. And then right before my senior year, I was having a conversation with my dad, and I was kind of freaking out. And I was like, I got to find an internship. I need to really figure out what's next here. And it's funny because I tell him this, and he doesn't even remember this conversation, but he's like, well, what is it that you enjoy doing? What is it that you think you're good about? And I listed probably a bunch of different things. And, he's a pastor, and I think he had this gift of discernment. And he's like, well, it sounds to me that, really three things are important. You enjoy working with money, relationships are really important, and you like seeing your work have a direct impact. I was like, yeah, that sounds right. And he's like, well,
sounds like the way you raised. Yeah.
Right. And so he's like, well, have you thought about being a financial advisor? And he worked with that would then become my first boss. And so I could introduce you to, who I work with, it could be a good fit. And I was like, yeah, I haven't really thought about that. And so it's crazy how all that shook out. So I ended up sitting down, who ended up being my first boss, and he was interviewing me. And then I just kind of turned things around. I was like, hey, I don't know anything about this industry. Like, what is it really about? And he's like, well, it's a lot of things, but when it comes down to it, it's really, three main things. It's enjoying working with money. It's enjoying the relationships with clients. And you're able to step back and see the impact that you have. And I hadn't told him those things of what my dad told me, but I was like, wow, this seems to be in alignment. So I did my internship with that firm. The end of the internship, got offered full-time job. And I was the first advisor that firm had hired at that point. And, I have a lot of respect for that company, for my boss. We still have a good relationship to this day. But he came out of the wirehouse, throw everyone on the wall, see who sticks process. And he's like, hey, I don't want to do that. I want to put you on like a 2-year plan of being really an apprentice and watching everything. I'll pay you a salary. We'll get you all licensed up, and then we'll start, transitioning you to doing some more servicing and then bring in your own clients and so forth. So that internship led to my first job, and I was there about 10 years before stepping out and launching Fiden.
10 years. All right. So how did it compare to what you thought it was going to be? Like, I don't mean that to be a negative thing, but like, how do you feel like the reality compared to the perception of what you were going to be doing?
I don't know, honestly, if I had a great idea of what I thought it was going to be. And so I want to say it met my expectations. I'm not sure I could really articulate what those expectations were. I mean, that firm does a lot of things really, really well. And it was, it was a planning first relationship. They were at a broker dealer, still are at a broker dealer. I didn't know about the fee only space at that point, but it, for by and large, it was very satisfying for what I thought as far as those three things of what I was looking to do. I was able to flesh those things out pretty well, and I felt that team did that pretty well as well.
All right. So what type of work? I mean, 10 years, sort of what was your progression over time in terms of, taking on more of an advisor role? Yeah.
So those first couple of years, I mean, it really was doing nothing but watching my boss interact with clients, doing some like marketing work, doing some writing, and so forth to help with advertising and some marketing work, and sitting in on the client meetings. And maybe for the first year, I was really just literally sitting there and listening. And then eventually, my boss would say, hey, here's a couple agenda items that we want to bring up with the client. I want you to take over this portion of the agenda. And he was still in those meetings with me. And then after 2 years, started meeting with some of the existing clients by myself, and kind of shifted into a compensation structure where I'd be rewarded for bringing in new business to the firm. But it was still predominantly salary, and there was a little bit of incentive for the production role of it. And then that continued just to evolve over the 10 years I was there, from servicing the advisors to really kind of building up. I don't want to call it my own book, because we actually ran everything through one rep code at the firm. But there was clients who I was in charge of that I could have full reign on making investment decisions, how the plan looks and so forth. And so towards the end of the time, it was the point where we had segmented the clients, enough of these were my clients, quote unquote, and there's another advisor there at that point. But we had team meetings in the beginning of the week to kind of go over everything. It's like, hey, here's what so-and-so's got going on. Here's what I'm thinking about making a change. What do you guys think about this? And it was a good team-based approach.
Yeah, it's a cool way of doing it. So you had your own clients, but you still had sort of scheduled meetings to go over various client cases, be able to ask questions, throw out ideas, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we had them every Monday. So it was, It was good because, at that point, especially early on, you still wasn't entirely confident in my ability. So for me to be able to take the lead and then get the kind of bounce those ideas off of someone a little older than me was super, super helpful.
It really sounds like the ideal career path scenario that so many of us look for when we come out of college and get into financial planning. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to go learn from an older advisor. I'm going to spend a couple years watching and learning, and I'm going to spend a couple years, practicing with their oversight. And then I'm going to really be able to take off and run.
Yeah. So
did you have conversations at any point along the way on like contractually whose clients are whose and that sort of thing? Because I feel like if I'm a firm owner and I hire a kid fresh out of college, like I'm not thinking about signing non-competes and, you have to buy your clients if you take them with you. But at some point in here, you're starting to realize like, okay, well, you have all the relationships. And if you leave, you're probably taking your clients with you. Like, was that ever a conversation or it sort of maybe never happened?
No, it didn't happen. There, kind of coinciding with this was a succession plan of me and another team member there eventually buying out the founder of the firm. And so it wasn't really on anyone's mind as far as, one of us leaving, which, looking back on, maybe it should have been addressed a little bit more directly. But it wasn't a conversation that we had. There was a lot of mutual trust between the two of us. I mean, so far that, when I did end up deciding to leave, that transition out was it couldn't have went much better than what it did.
Yeah. So it seems like you were in the golden parachute of financial planning jobs. I mean, how could it be more perfect? Which is, I think, sometimes the hardest jobs to leave sometimes, because it's like, oh, like my boss is a dirtbag and he's mean to me and yells at me all the time. Like, okay, that's easy. But I went through this at my first job. When I went to leave, my parents were like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Like, this is the golden opportunity. And it was so hard to articulate at the time. And I still don't think I do a good job of articulating why that I felt like that was the best move. So is that how ultimately it felt for you at the end? Like, what ultimately drove you to make the decision to leave this golden opportunity and be able to strike out on your own?
Yeah, it really was. So I'm a big journaler, and so I'll go back and read my journal entries from this time, and that was a common question I came back to. I was like, why do you want to leave? This opportunity. I mean, there's so much in front of you. You've got a great boss. You got a great team. But as I started to kind of peel back those layers, and I was talking to my wife about this the other day, really the whole 10 years that I was there, I was constantly going back and forth of wanting to go out, wanting to create something of my own and, kind of talking myself back off that ledge because of that. This is such a good opportunity. Like, there's nothing forcing you out. But as I dove into that a little bit more, I realized that my family comes from entrepreneurs. My great grandpa started a pretty decent sized family business that, a lot of my family was involved. My wife's families are all entrepreneurs. They all have their own gigs. And that desire to create an own entity, something that I could put my fingerprint on, that, I could have control over the marketing and the branding and, the service levels, that never really went away. And what I ended up realizing is that even if I were to fast forward 15, 20 years down the road, and if I'm a primary owner at that standpoint, I still don't think I'm going to feel like this company is my own. And that was a big realization for me of how strong that entrepreneurial desire really was.
It's a really interesting point. I'm not sure I've heard anybody articulate it that way, that, entrepreneurism, technically the definition of entrepreneur is someone who starts a business, I guess. And so like that is different than taking over and running a business. Ultimately, where you're at may be the same, but the way you got there can be very different. And sometimes the best people at starting businesses aren't the best people at running and maintaining businesses, which is also a reality. So I imagine that was a very difficult fact to reconcile with, but also important to know yourself and to explore that well enough, which it sounds like supportive partner is huge, and that supportive father, that sort of, and really just coming from a background that understood entrepreneurism, which I do think is a help for folks that don't come from an entrepreneurial family. It seems a little crazy to go off on your own.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was thinking more about it, one of the ways that I tried to like almost chain myself to the mast, so to say, of sticking with the firm and, kind of trying to put to bed this idea of starting my own was when we were moving to the house that we're at now. It's kind of, our grown up house. We settled on this place in December of 2016 and 2015. And I view this as like, okay, if I'm going to, outlay the money to make this purchase and, have a higher mortgage than what I'm used to, like this is my way of staying committed, to the firm. And then it was 12 months almost to the day of settlement when my boss and I ended up having the conversation that I was leaving. So it was a serious tension, but it was great.
Funny how we can use things like that to sometimes trick ourselves without meaning to. I'm like, no, this shows. See how committed I am? And then it's like, all right, I got to follow that dream. So talk to me about that last year. Was there sort of an impetus, something that happened that made you say, okay, yeah, now's the time? Or was it just sort of this slow process that ultimately boiled over?
A little bit of both. The succession plan that we had talked about for a number of years was coming to a head. There was going to be some things written down, and I was going to have the chance to actually buy into the business the following January. And, my boss and I had a phenomenal relationship, still do. And I didn't feel a piece of, still going down this path with knowing there was some uncertainty in my mind and in my heart without me being fully committed to it. And so I told him, I was like, hey, look, I really can't put this idea entirely to bed. And I'm not sure if this is such a good thing for us to keep moving forward with this until I really know. And, to his credit, he didn't fire me on the spot or anything like that. He's like, hey, I get it. He's like, but, we do need to make a decision here. At this point, we were working with a business coach. And so the three of us were sitting down and kind of unpacked this for him. And this is one of those things that I don't think I'll ever forget. We explained the situation to the business coach, and he looked at me and my boss in the room. He's like, yeah, Jeremy, I don't think that's in the cards for you. I just don't see you having what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And that couldn't have been any more of a motivational statement than what I needed at that point. And so,
wow, good job, business coach. You hope that person was doing that intentionally.
And a funny quick aside on that, about 6 months after I launched, he sent me a text message and was like, hey, just wanted to touch base, see if you needed a business coach with your new endeavor. I'm like, yeah, we passed by that bridge.
That is really funny. I love it when people tell me things can't be done. I was reading a book recently that said that's like, in some people's mind, that is the motivator for entrepreneurs. It's to create and to do things people said couldn't be done. Just because that's sort of, I don't know. I hear that from so many folks that ultimately start a business they just love knowing someone out there is telling them it can't be done. Some people hate that, but some of us love it. So
yeah, it was a good motivation for me.
So that was December of 2016. You launched in April of 2017. So pretty tight window considering, that this wasn't like, I'm assuming you hadn't had like a website built and everything before you had this conversation. Sounds like it sort of came up. So what was that 4-month process like in terms of starting to work on the business as well as, conversations with clients and working with your old boss to be sure, things went down appropriately?
Yeah. So my boss and I had that conversation in mid-December, but kept it just between the two of us. Didn't let any of the team members know, didn't let any clients know or anything. And then end of December, we kind of agreed, mid-January is when, my last day would be. And so we drafted a letter actually together that was going to go out to all the clients of the firm, just kind of explaining what was going on. We both signed it. We both kind of agreed on the language that we were going to use, which I thought was, a testament to the character of my boss. And because of what we talked about before, we didn't have any, non-compete or, any agreement on whose clients are whose. What we ended up doing is taking a look at all the client households that I was the primary advisor on, whether I had brought them in myself or just kind of took over and, I was kind of who they always dealt with. We just went down the list one by one and said, okay, it's okay for me to reach out to this person. It's not okay for me to reach out to this person. And it was a very peaceful conversation that we had. And then kind of tied with that was anyone who we agreed I would not proactively reach out to. If they were to go and find me, I didn't have to refer them back to the firm. I could say, hey, yeah, let's have this conversation. We wanted it to be kind of a win all around. We didn't want to put the clients in a hard spot of, having to choose between us. Didn't want to, necessarily put me in a hard spot or the business in a hard spot. So it really couldn't have went much better. I mean, even a couple months after I launched, people would call me and they're like, yeah, I called into the office, looking for you. And they gave me your number to reach out. So it went really well.
Yeah. Did y'all have any disagreements? I mean, was there a household or two that you were like, no, I want to call them, and he didn't want you to call them?
Yeah, I kind of had my dream list of saying, hey, here's everyone I want to talk with. And he was like, well, maybe we can find some compromise here. I forget what the exact numbers were, but I ended up being able to talk to, I think it was about 20 or 25 households in order for them to make the transition with me. It might have been a little less than that, but right around that. I think my initial ask was probably around 60 or 70.
Okay. Well, you sound like a good guy too. It wasn't like you couldn't, right? You made the decision to respect his business and walk away from 35 households that you could have contacted. So before you launched, it sounds like you were actually doing some of the business development at this point, marketing, bringing some of your own clients. Where were you finding success? And were there any limitations? Were there asset minimums or net worth minimums or certain types of clients that you were encouraged to bring on at that point?
Yeah, that firm didn't have a super firm minimum, but it was a suggested minimum. But it was to the point where I didn't necessarily feel comfortable asking people who would be beneath that amount to come on, knowing that they weren't going to get the level of service that they could if we had another option available. So I don't want to say it was a firm minimum, but we were certainly trying to attract a higher end client than maybe what we would have done in the past. Okay.
And then were you finding that there were clients that you wanted to be able to work with that you just couldn't, or did that sort of, it was broad enough that you were able to work with the folks that you wanted to be able to work with?
No, I love working with entrepreneurs. I love the philosophy. I love, how creative they are. But the problem with working with entrepreneurs, especially younger entrepreneurs, is all their money's tied up in their business. There's nothing to manage from an AUM standpoint. And my previous firm was very much AUM focused. There wasn't any type of retainer fees or subscription fees or anything like that. And so the entrepreneurs, I love so much, it wasn't a great fit because we just didn't have a way of making it work revenue wise.
Yeah, entrepreneurs, I think about myself as a client. I would be the worst client for myself. I mean, again, one, most of your net worth's tied up in businesses. And two, if you ever do get $1 to your name, you tend to invest it into businesses. We're not the best at being like, okay, I'm going to put money into my Roth IRA every year. It's like, but think of the other things with high ROI I could do. So working with entrepreneurs is certainly a challenge, and you have to have a fee structure that actually allows you to work with those clients and be able to sort of meet them where they're at. So,
yep, exactly.
So talk to me about the transition of launching the firm. So you had these couple of months where you're going through, figuring out which clients you could contact. So did you contact the clients after you had launched the new RIA?
Let me think of the timing on that. The clients that we agreed that I could reach out to, they actually got a separate letter from the one that everyone else got that explained that once I was up and registered, I would be reaching out. And so that was a little bit of a primer. I didn't want to get in trouble with any regulators as far as soliciting business before the RIA was actually established in the state. So I didn't have any super specific conversations with the clients till after we were up and running.
So how did those conversations go? You get launched and you start having the conversations. Did pretty much everyone move over, or did you get some pushback from folks?
Yeah, I got some pushback from a handful of clients. I mean, I very much identified with that firm. And so I'd say maybe half of the clients, it came as a big shock. They're like, what happened? Was there a blow up? I was like, no, like nothing happened. Here's the reasoning why. And, to be honest, I didn't know about XYPN, but even the whole fee only movement till maybe a year and a half before I ended up leaving the firm. And so that just resonated so truthfully and inside my heart of like the avoidance of all conflicts of interest or most conflicts of interest just really resonated with me. I was like, this is the way that I want to, be able to practice being an advisor. And, I was careful in my language and say, look, just because someone's not fee only doesn't mean they're not doing, what's right by you. But this is just kind of a pure way of doing it. So most clients got it. And then the other half of the clients were like, yeah, I was surprised you were here as long as you were, just kind of waiting for you to make the change. But, and I was just telling someone else this morning. It was funny. I had 2 households contact me a couple months ago who had worked with the previous firm. And they're like, we just wanted to see if you were going to be around, in a year afterwards. And now that you still are, we'd like to make the transition. So.
Yeah, and that's what's tough, and we see it ourselves, right? We talk to a tech company or where we're going to be, using their software to work with our clients. And the last thing you want is, them to be up and running for a year and then close down. Now, by us signing on, it would help them make it past the first year. But I understand the trepidation of moving advisors. Once is tough, moving them twice would be even tougher. So how many clients were you then sort of able to launch with that were able to move over fairly quickly?
It was between 20 and 25, I think, households. So I count, if there's a husband and wife, I'm just counting that as one household. Yeah, between 20 and 25.
And then, so that was April 2017. By the end of 2017, do you recall how many clients you had at that point?
Well, let me work backwards. I probably would have been around 45 to 50 at that stage.
Okay. So what was your growth? So 20-ish, 22, let's say, when you launched, in the 40s by the end of the year. And then sort of what have been the other milestones that have client numbers attached to them?
So closed out the year last year, 2018, right at 70 household clients. And then, probably another 5 or 6 who have already signed and paid a deposit fee to start the planning as well. So it won't be too far here into the new year. I'll be close up to 75, 76.
We're 4 days into the year. You're on track for 1 new client a day. That sounds like fun. So you've seen just really incredible growth. I mean, it sounds like average, I'm trying to do that back in napkin math. I mean, about 2.5 clients a month. And it's been pretty steady actually from really when you launched all the way through. So we'll break it up into phases early on, and maybe it hasn't changed, but any differences early on versus now in terms of where you're seeing success in new clients finding you that are interested in services?
Yeah. Early on, I was part of Dave Ramsey's SmartVestor Pro program, and I had been affiliated with Ramsey for kind of years previous in his ELP or endorsed local provider before it morphed over. For reasons maybe we don't need to get into entirely.
There's only so many things you can say about Ramsey without getting
right.
sued. So I'm definitely putting your name in the title so he emails me. Can you just tell folks so ELP was endorsed local provider. That's back in the day. My understanding, it was primarily for like insurance and investment salespeople. They paid him a fee for leads. And then that has morphed. So can you just talk about that SmartVestor program and sort of what it's morphed into?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's morphed into something that's better. So rather than just having one person show up in your geographic zip code, there's between 4 or 5 advisors, and then you can choose who you want to contact from that list. So in Lancaster area, which is I think it covers the whole county, there were 4 of us when I backed out, and I think there's still 3 or 4 there as well. But I mean, I don't want to overly knock on the program. If somebody is looking for just investment advice, I mean, they do a good job with that. The issue that I really had was, I want to build out a plan. I want to talk about, the future and your values and what you want to accomplish with your money. And that wasn't really what that program was delivering. It was more like, hey, where can I put my money? I want to start investing. I said, hey, we'll get to that, but first we're going to walk through a plan. And so I ended up having to kind of sell the financial plan to him, which just didn't work out very well.
So did you pay a fee or a percentage of revenue or both to be part of that program?
Yeah, it was a flat monthly fee that I paid. And I ran that from, I guess it was in all of 2017 and then maybe the first couple months of 2018. Because even though I wasn't, my quote unquote closing rate was drastically lower than the national average, I was still picking up some decent clients from it. But it got to the point where there were other referral sources coming in, and I didn't need to pay it. And so I just chose not to.
Okay. Yeah, I get questions from advisors on whether or not they should check it out or, sign up. And I always say, like, I've heard both sides of the coin where, some folks get a lot of clients from that program. Some get none. Sometimes the geographic regions can be a little weirdly drawn. And so all of a sudden you're getting people that are like 50 and 60 miles away. But good to know you did see some success, but it is going to send you a type of client that's not necessarily looking for comprehensive financial planning.
Yeah, by and large. And what I've told a handful of people who asked me about my experience with it, I was like, look, there's so many leads that come in. I think I average like 25 to 30 leads a month from it. I was like, you get really, really good at pitching your services. As far as, that sales pitch that you give that first time you're on the phone call, I mean, you just by pure repetition, you're going to get good at it. So if nothing else, it's a way of kind of fine tuning your pitch.
It reminds me of when I was told the recommendation of interview with a couple of companies fresh out of college that you don't want to work for, just to practice interviewing before you interview for the job you really want. So there you go. You just need at-bats, right? That's how you practice. So, and hopefully you get some clients out of it, which you were able to. So it sounds like that was one source, and you said some others started picking up that ultimately made it so you didn't feel like you needed to rely on that anymore.
Yep. Yeah. So XYPN, find an advisor, got a handful through there. I'm also a certified Kingdom advisor. And so I was getting some leads from their website. And then it's in our area, there's a lot of financial advisors. And early on, if you search, fee only advisor, Lancaster, PA, I was, on page like 3 or 4. And I didn't honestly, I didn't tweak my SEO strategy or anything like that. But I started just gradually getting higher and higher on that list. And I'm the only really young fee-only advisor in our area. So if someone's doing some searching around of fee-only advisors that they want to meet with locally, I'm probably the youngest one by, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, there's just not a lot of advisors under 50, so that not hard to do. So do you feel like age has made a bit of a difference just in terms of folks wanting to sign up with an advisor that they feel like is going to be around for a long time?
Yeah, it's funny. I said, so I'm 35 years old, and I feel like this is like the sweet spot to be an advisor, because I remember, when I was 22, 23, the conversations that I'd have with clients, they'd be like, oh yeah, my grandson's your age. And it was like, oh, that's not a very, confident vote. And so the age really played against you. And now I'm having people talk to me like, I don't want my advisor to die or to retire before I, really, really need them. And so it's funny now that I'm not too young, but I'm also not too old. So this, mid 30 range seems to be working out pretty well.
So talk to me about the Kingdom Advisors. This is admittedly a group I just recently learned about, but I haven't talked to any advisors about them. So you said Certified Kingdom Advisor. So what is the organization?
Yeah, so it's a organization that was merged from 2 other ones back in the day, but the 2, real visionaries behind it were Ron Blue and Larry Burkett. And I think Kingdom Advisors, they might have did a rebrand in like the early 2000s, but as what they do today is probably early 2000s is when that came around. It's a membership organization. Anyone can be part of it, but then you can become a certified Kingdom Advisor if you go through a lot of training and about, what does the Bible say about money and handling money and the emotions that come with money? How do you have conversations with your clients that aren't just about, the quarter to date return or, about how much their net worth's growing, but what are the eternal impacts or what are the legacies that they're going to be leaving behind to their kids and to their grandkids and so forth. And it's just, it speaks exactly with what I think a good advisor does is, making good money decisions, but tying it back to why are we doing this? What's the value? What are the goals behind it? And Kingdom Advisors has been a tremendous tool for me in crafting those conversations with clients.
And you are getting clients through their Find an Advisor portal as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome. So do you recommend it for all advisors to take a look at Kingdom Advisors? Is it better for folks that are looking to incorporate faith-based principles into their planning process or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think I would say if you're definitely looking to incorporate more, faith-based principles, Reason being is that you need to have a couple letter of recommendations to become a certified Kingdom advisor, one from your pastor, a handful from clients that, kind of vouch for your spirituality and as far as where you stand from a Christian walk standpoint. So, if someone's not necessarily walking strong in that path, it's probably not a great idea. But also because a lot of their content, it's not just, economic forecasting or, portfolio construction. A lot of their content is based on what one of the guys, Jim Wise of the group, calls, disciple making, of, helping people grow in their faith and realizing that finances are a big component of that.
Okay. So folks that aren't necessarily of Christian faith may not feel like it's for them. Like the content may not quite be on point there, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment. And I think it was funny. Kitsis approached me at XYPN Live back in September and saw that I was a CKA, and he's like, "Hey, I heard about this. I'd love to have someone, come on to my podcast about it." And I was like, "Oh my word, that'd be amazing." I was like, "You need to get Rob West on." And so sure enough, I think Rob was on there in the past month or so.
Yeah. That was part of what I think sparked that conversation where I think I'd heard of it, but wasn't all that familiar with it and didn't realize that a lot of synergies in terms of how we believe financial advisors should operate their business. We have many advisors that incorporate faith into their financial planning process. Obviously, many do not. So, sort of a niche within a niche, if you will. So I want to come back to how you incorporate those principles into your planning practice, but just sort of other pieces, just because, again, you've had such great growth in the company. Have there been any other big sources of clients, or it sounds like a lot of online sources and listings and that sort of thing have really driven a lot of clients your way?
Yeah, the only outbound marketing that I do is every Friday I send out something just creatively titled, Fident Friday. And it's a real quick email. It's like 250 words or less that I try and touch on something, whether it's markets related or, a specific financial planning technique or, a stewardship thought. Or even the one I sent out this morning was about, life balance. That's the only thing. And that goes out to clients, and there's some prospective clients on there as well. But that list has really grown very, very fast, because if someone's kind of not sure if, they're ready to enter into that relationship, they hop on this list, and it's a, steady way that I'm kind of dripping into their inbox and, kind of staying front and center with them, but it also gives them a really good idea of my approach and, my principles and so forth. And I've just been able to stay consistent with that. And then as I'm having conversations with prospective clients, in our 15-minute conversation or whatever on the phone, I might, think of, oh man, I wrote about this a couple months ago, and I'll send them that link to say, hey, here's something that I put out in an email. Here's a link to it. You can go read it. If it resonates with you, hey, hop on the list. And then I've noticed my conversion rates going up because people resonate with it. And eventually when the time is right for them, they sign on.
Awesome. Yeah. The beauty of content and drip marketing, it really does work. It's a long play. Those clients don't just show up from day one like, hey, I sent out an email. I got 3 clients. But if you are consistent, send it out regularly, send out valuable content that people will open and read and interact with, then it really can be a powerful tool.
Yeah, and I should give all credit to Carl Richards on this as well. I was really struggling with, all right, do I get into social media? How do I enhance my Twitter presence? Blah, blah, blah. And it was I think it was on one of his webinars. He's just like, man, if you do one thing, send a short, brief email to your clients, make it relatable, make it brief, make it something that they're going to look forward to open, and make it super easy for them to share. And email is crazy easy to share because all I have to do is click forward. And that's, he said that to me a year and a half ago, I guess, and I took it and ran with it.
So talk to me a little bit about how you approach financial planning and I guess from your experience and working with other advisors and being in a study group, like how you feel like your planning process is different from other advisors, particularly in this area of incorporating, like I said, faith-based principles into your planning process and just sort of what that looks like.
So it's probably helpful to know that I require any new client who comes on board with me to walk through an initial comprehensive financial plan. I don't do any investment only. I don't, just kind of onboard someone and roll out a plan gradually. Like I understand the business model of folks that do that, but what I kind of force clients to do is build out the initial plan and charge for that. And through that plan, I call it the C3 process. There's going to be 3 meetings. The first one is what I call the clarity meeting. And this is where, I ask questions to really kind of scrape into their heart as far as what's important to them about money. The questions I'll sometimes ask is, what do you want your kids to remember you about? What characteristic traits do you want to be remembered for? Those types of questions to really get at their values and then use those values to kind of then help shape some of their goals. That whole meeting is usually just, and I joke with people, I was like, this might feel more like a therapy session than it does, a financial planning session, but that's okay. We'll get to the financial planning eventually. So that whole first meeting is what I call the clarity meeting, is so far allowing me and on a lot of times them to get clear on what's important. And then I do all the data gathering and so forth. We might kind of put some loose parameters around some goals that they might have. Get back again on what I call the calculate meeting, as far as saying, based on what I understand to be important to you, here's where we're at from the fulfillment of some of these goals that we started to sketch out based on where we're at right now. Here are the assumptions that went into that. How do you feel about this? And then the third meeting, when we wrap up this initial plan, is what I call the calibrate meeting. And that's saying, all right, here's some things that we can kind of fine tune in order to get our finances in alignment with what our values are. So the clarity meeting, the calculate meeting, and then the calibrate meeting at the end of it.
So once clients go through that 3-step process, what does the ongoing planning process look like? Yeah,
so I actually make that optional. So I say this is the creatively called phase 1 of we're going to build the plan. And then this plan is going to be designed in a way that you can self-implement it. You can take it and run with it, or you can hire me to implement as much as I can from, oftentimes tied to the wealth management component. And that's phase 2. And you have the option of whether you want to enter into that or not. Most clients do. Probably 8 out of 10 people who go through the initial plan end up, hiring me from the ongoing plan. And that is it kind of varies a little bit per client, but it's typically sitting down 2 to 3 times during the course of the year. I like to structure it like beginning, mid, end of the year, and keeping that plan that we built up to date. And if there's things we need to do, like this past December, a bunch of tax loss harvesting, addressing those things at that point. So 2 to 3 times a year is what that phase 2 looks like.
So when you have said the number of clients that you have, are all of those ongoing clients, or some of those have done the one-time plan but have not signed on for ongoing?
Yeah, that 70 figure is all ongoing clients. There would be a couple clients who went through who didn't choose to be ongoing clients, and that would not be included in that.
So I've had a couple of folks on the show recently that are experiencing hyper growth, which I would consider 2 clients a month plus, which if you include these one-time clients, you're probably at 3 clients a month. I think that's easily classified as hyper growth. And the question I always get, and I don't have an answer for, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is how in the heck are you keeping up with all the client work? I mean, how do you manage your time in a way that allows you to actually do all these plans? Because you're not just, handing them a sheet of paper after one meeting and calling it good. This is an intensive process. So how are you balancing the growth? I mean, one, just getting all the new plans written, plus your ongoing clients being able to get those plans updated and those meetings happening.
Yeah, I don't think I have the great answer that you're looking for on that. Because I should also add into this, we have 4 kiddos at home, ages 9, 6.
Of course.
Yeah, 9, 6, 4, and 9 months old. And my wife's a stay-at-home mom. And so it's an intense period of life. I think it's setting clear expectations. Sometimes I do feel like, I'm crafting these emails. Hey, sorry, it's been, so long since I got back to you. But owning up on, when things maybe do go longer than what they should, just, hey, I'm sorry that this was on me, and kind of owning up to it, but also just getting really, really efficient with what you can do. And so, I need to give credit to a guy in my study group called Trevor Meyer. I mean, Trevor's just been incredibly beneficial with helping me use technology to get super, super efficient with getting the things done that need to get done. I mean, he's been a tremendous asset, and he's much more gifted in that area than I am. And so I feel I've taken a lot of steps of just getting more efficient using the tools that are available and relying on other people to kind of help in that regard.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to do like a video recording of a week in the life of a hypergrowth firm because no one seems to have an answer other than like some advisors will say like, I couldn't possibly write more than one plan a month. And others are writing one every 3 days, which, isn't just plan writing. It's all the other pieces that come with that.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't want to, I always feel like everyone's talking about, how hard they're grinding and the hours that they put in. I try not to go crazy, with it, but there's probably more, once the kids are in bed, there's probably more nights that I'm working than there's not. And I recognize, this is a stage, this is a season. It's not always going to be this intense, but I've kind of embraced it. I've given up some hobbies and because, I still enjoy it. It's not like I dread the work that I do.
So do you feel like you're approaching a capacity constraint just with the number of ongoing clients? Really, we see a lot of advisors between 75 and 100 is when they start slowing down, particularly with new clients. So are you feeling that coming on or do you feel like your processes are efficient enough to keep going at this speed?
That's a great question. So when I launched, I had a number in mind. I said, you know what? I don't want to hire anybody. I don't want to, have this crazy large firm. I want to have the lifestyle firm that, a lot of people talk about. And I think I can do that with 80 clients. And so I'm going to ramp up to 80. It'll take me 3 to 4 years to get there. And we're going to go on autopilot, from there on out and really dig deep into those relationships. But with the growth, that the firm did see, I realized I was fast approaching that way earlier than what I was anticipating doing that. And so I kind of revisited this idea and I had a mentor challenge me because I was bringing this up, I guess halfway through last year or something. And he really challenged me. He's like, do you think you give a better experience and that your clients are better off working with you compared to other advisors? And I said, yeah, in general. He's like, so are you doing a disservice to everyone else who's not working with you by capping yourself and not working with them? And I was like, I'm not sure how to answer that. And then he's like, if you really believe in stewardship, Jeremy, that, God has given to you what he has chosen to, and you're to manage that. He's like, I don't think you should throttle down your growth. It's like, I think you should really evaluate if this is what, he wants you to do. And maybe that cap number is higher than what you think it is. So I've kind of just allowed that. And I went through the Traction EOS system to create my 3-year and 10-year vision and everything, and I do envision hiring more staff, in the next couple of years to help me service more clients than what I initially thought I was going to get capped at.
It's really interesting because and I'm sure listeners the same way I am are like, wait, some of you out there are like, what in the world? Like you should build the business you want to build and you should. But what we think we want and what we ultimately build can change, and that's okay. So often we see advisors get sort of in this mindset of I'm going to build a solo practice and there's no room for anything else, or I'm only going to grow my business. And then you start to grow and you realize you don't like it. And it's okay to give yourself permission to make adjustments and to let the dream and the vision evolve. I really see in XY, we sort of have these 3 personas of advisors, and we talk a lot about 2 of them. One is the lifestyle practice. I'm going to be by myself. I'm going to outsource a couple of things, and it's just going to be me. And I would describe that mostly as like, I primarily am the financial planner. And on the other end, we talk about the people that want to grow a big firm, right? I want to have hundreds of advisors and thousands of clients and billions under management and really scale this enterprise firm. And really your day-to-day is I want to be a business owner, because you can't be a financial planner at that level if you're CEO of that. But there's this middle ground we don't do enough talking about. And that is like, I want a lifestyle business. I don't know, we say like lifestyle practice, lifestyle business. I want it to be a business. I want there to be 5 to 10 of us here. I want to be able to grow it, not just be me, but I don't want the enterprise. And in that level, it's sort of like half business owner, half financial planner. And I don't know if those are the only 3 buckets, but we've been trying to sort of consolidate down and say like, what are the 3 buckets? And I think like what you experienced was moving from the lifestyle practice into lifestyle business. And who knows, maybe one day you decide to go enterprise, but like, I don't think we spend enough time talking about and really talking to advisors that are building that 5 to 10 person firm that it's not just 1 person or 1,000. There is this 20 person option as well.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of shifted in my mind was, as I talked about in my previous firm, how grateful I am for what my boss invested into me, especially those first 2, 3, 4 years. I really do want to be able to turn around and invest that into somebody else, hiring someone, just out of college or someone just entering into our field, and kind of pay that forward as well. And if I'm capping my clients at that, I'm not going to be able to financially afford to do that.
Makes sense. So do you anticipate hiring soon, or is this a couple years out? Like, what's the plan?
It's a good question. At this point, I don't envision hiring at least for another year. My biggest need right now is more help with building out these initial plans. And so I actually am in agreement with somebody to kind of be a paraplanner of sorts, not a full-time employee, more of a 1099 contractor deal. And I think that's going to take a lot off of my plate. It's not going to be huge. I told him it's probably going to, 4 or 5, 6 hours a week, something like that. But that's going to, I think, give me enough breathing room to put off really needing to hire someone for, I don't know, a year or so.
Fair enough. So one of the other things that we talked about in our sort of pre-call, and I had a note on that I wanted to chat about, was a situation and an opportunity that you have faced in your first 2 years in business. And it was the opportunity to not stay solo and to potentially get bought out. So can you tell me just a little bit more about that opportunity that presented itself?
Yeah. So shortly after I left my other firm, had another firm come up to me and express interest of, bringing me on board as advisor. I told them, no, this is the reasoning why, but, appreciate the offer. And then about a year and a half after that, I guess, maybe a little less than that, they re-engaged with me as well and said, hey, we really would like to, have a conversation about what this could look like. We want to bring you on as a partner. We would acquire your book of business. We would, run an evaluation of what we think Fident is currently worth, and then we'd use that equity for your initial buy-in of the firm. And I told them no again, but they came back and said, we really want to, at least have a longer conversation, about it. We respect your decision, but, we just really think this could be a good fit. And so right around this time was when I was probably working the most I've ever worked. It was really stressful. Our youngest, JD, was born right around this time. And so, life was just insane. And so I went into this conversation with them with a lot of pain points, administrative wise, operational wise, and their offer was extremely attractive. Coming in to work with an ensemble firm, I have a lot of respect, for the guys who were there, and a lot of it was very, very attractive. Their offer was very attractive. Kind of the idea of cashing out on what Fident was being evaluated at was extremely attractive. And so I, entertained this idea, and honestly, at some point was ready to, to sign on the line, and took 2 or 3 months during this to actually stop taking on new clients. Just said, hey, we'll re-engage in the fall, but this was over the summer. And I said, just not taking on any new clients right now. To take the time, to really think about it, talk with my wife, so forth. But at the end of the day, I went back to those journal entries that I had when I left my previous firm of the reasons why I left. And, my wife, to her credit, said very upfront, she's like, you shouldn't do this. Like, you're going to get unhappy again. This itch is not going to go away. And I should have listened to her, right away. It would have saved me a couple months of agony going through the decision. But that's why I ended up deciding. I as much as I respect this firm, I am, going to say no, because this idea of being an entrepreneur, of this be able to create is really important. But it was by no means an easy decision. I really agonized over it for a while.
It's a tough one, and one that we see advisors face frequently. We faced it at XY about a year in, got approached with an attractive offer of merger. And it was interesting. Similar situation, bigger company looking to buy, looking to merge in a smaller one. It was a similar deal, trade your equity for equity in the firm. And I remember Kitsis was the one who said, Alan, we're trading a stock for a bond. we have this stock, we have this company that's doubling every year, and that, and I mean, you're at even higher growth rate than that in terms of value. And I'm going to take that value and I'm going to trade it for value in a big company that if they grow 20% a year, everyone's ecstatic. But like realistically, they're growing like 8 to 10%. And so it's like, yeah, do I believe in my ability to grow at a faster rate than 10 to 15% for the next few years? Like, yeah, that'd be hard to do because we're tiny. It's a lot easier to add 10% to a small company and big company. So advisors out there thinking about starting a firm, you will be faced with this. I've long joked that there's no better way to get a job offer in financial planning than to start your own firm. The job offers will show up, the opportunities will show up, and there's no right answer. There's no like you should or you shouldn't, but do spend some time really thinking about that decision because it is a hard choice to make. Usually we are in a pain, like in the midst of this really agonizing pain point that's happening. And that's what, sort of sparks the conversation. But, you have to remember why you started the business in the first place. And it doesn't make anyone who decides to merge or sell that's not a bad thing. It just needs to be the right decision for you.
Man, I love that analogy, a stock versus a bond. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. He said it and I was like, oh yeah, I like stocks. I'm like 27. I love stocks. Why would I want a bond at 27? So looking forward, it sounds like you're bringing in a paraplanner. Growth is going to continue. Any other big goals? Sort of, if we use the traction terminology on the 1-year plan to meet that sort of 3 and 10-year targets.
Yeah, what I need to be paying a lot more attention to than I have in the past is my average fee per client. I need to be a little bit more intentional with that, and so I have a certain metric of what I want my overall average, fee per client to be. And that's always tricky because the AUM model is, I still think in my mind, the greatest of an imperfect list of compensation options, provided you have a minimum fee, that you're charging through retainer. But to me, like, it's still, if you're managing $1 million or imagine $2 billion for a client and they're paying you a flat fee, like, I understand the simplicity of that. I love that. But there could be a perception from the client of saying like, well, Jeremy's not invested in my account growing because he's going to get paid, the same, whether it goes up or it goes down. And I think that's like a very valid perception from the client. So anyway, because I have this blend of, retainer fee and AUM, and I need to be more intentional as far as increasing what that average fee per client is for me and five. So that's the 1-year plan, is to get really specific on that and do a better job making sure that needle is moving northward. But my goal, and I wrote this down actually just a couple of days ago. I'm probably going to need to revisit, but I want to end the year at 90 ongoing clients. I've got 6 kind of lined up already, and so I think that's probably an attainable goal. And then the expanded 10-year goal there, talked about that capped figure. I think if I have 4 staff, including myself, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that I could service in the neighborhood of 230 to 250 client households. So that's the 10-year vision. I just need to figure out what the annual increments need to be to get me up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, because these things tend to grow in compounding numbers, you'll get there a lot faster than you think potentially, which is fun, right? Nothing wrong with that. So that's awesome. I love the traction toolkit for anybody that's interested. It's traction, get a handle on your business. I think Gino Wickman EOS system, that's what we use at XY to run the
I'm looking
business.
at my vision organizer right now because I have it mounted on my wall.
The VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. I love it. We're actually rolling. We just went through the planning process with with an EOS business coach, traction coach, which was a lot of fun. And it's really awesome. It would be interesting to have done it solo and then with other people, because, you put me in my corner room and we're going to battle it out. People only see the agreement side of us. They don't see the arguing, and we can both be quite wordy. So
I saw some disagreement with the AMA sessions at the conference. I feel like you had a little bit of back and forth.
we try to bring out a united front. So yeah, as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question. Looking back, you've been in business 2 years, you've been in the industry, you spent really your whole career in the industry. If there's one piece of advice you wish you could go back and give your younger self, that one thing that you've learned that you wish you knew then, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Yeah, so I knew this question was coming, and I went back and read some old journal entries, from my younger self. And this is something that I feel I'm still learning. I don't give this, I still need to grow in this area, but I feel the past maybe 3 or 4 months have been especially enlightening to me in this. But what I'll tell my younger self is, be the person that you were created to be. Be yourself, and don't be the person that you think others want you to be, whether that's your boss or your spouse or your parents or your clients. Be you, and don't obsess over, trying to be this person who's not the real you. People want authenticity, and you're going to do a better job setting expectations and relationships in general if you are who you are and not trying to live up to this false self of who you think people want you to be. So again, I say that's like, this is still something that I, wrestle with, but I can think very clearly of, my younger self. Man, I was always thinking about what can I do to kind of be this person that this person wants me to be. And I say, don't, be you, be who you were created to be.
I love it. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your expertise and wisdom and career path. This was an awesome interview, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, thanks so much, Alan. It was a lot of fun.
How much money do you need to launch your own firm? That's a question we've got at XY Planning Network hundreds, if not thousands of times. To answer it once and for all, we developed a free budget template that accounts for the many variables of your first year in business. Along with the template, successful XYPN members opened their books for us and shared how they did it, what they spent, and what they do differently. Our first year budget download is an incredibly valuable resource for anyone considering launching a firm of their own. Download it for free at www.xyplanningnetwork.com/budget. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.